Hi, and welcome to Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. I'm Steve Palmer, and I invite you to join me as we explore the stories behind leaders in the hospitality industry and beyond. Say Grace is a place to reflect, connect, and savor thoughtful narratives. Everyone has a seat at our table. So pull up a chair and let's discover the transformative power of hospitality together. Hey there, and welcome to Say Grace. I am so honored today to be in Los Angeles interviewing icon and legend. Doesn't even begin to encapsulate my next guest today. I'm going to read your bio and then we'll just chat.
Okay.
I'm thrilled to welcome Wolfgang Puck to the podcast today. Wolfgang Puck is a chef, restaurateur, culinary pioneer whose name is synonymous with innovation in modern cuisine. Born in Austria, he began work as a teenager and later worked in some of Europe's greatest kitchens, Maxime's in Paris, where he finally found his way to Indiana. We'll get to that in a minute. In 1982, he opened his first restaurant, Spago, which changed the American landscape in so many different ways. Has won numerous James Beard Awards. On his career, Wolfgang has built a restaurant empire, books, television, received honors, Lifetime Achievement Award from the James Beard Foundation, Culinary Hall of Fame of Induction, and a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is my deep honor and privilege to welcome Wolfgang Puck to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure. I love you guys from the South. I think Charleston, where I heard you're from, it's really one of my favorite cities, and I have to go back down there because
Please, we
I
would love
did
to
not
have
go
you.
in a long time. Yeah, thank you.
Please come. Wow, I don't even know where to begin. So you grew up in Austria.
Yep.
And I know you haven't talked much about it, but in a not great household, you've talked a little bit about being depressed
Yeah.
as a kid and maybe even suicidal, and finding your first kitchen. But then you really I want to sort of start with when you got to France, because that's when you found your first
Yeah.
mentor.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about Paul
Well,
Mary.
I think I was so lucky. As you said, I grew in a household with a stepfather who was the worst you could be as a stepfather or father or as a human being. So at 14, I left my home and moved 50 miles away. It wasn't enough. And, I had trouble there because we had a chef who was similar to my stepfather. And I almost jumped into the river at that time when I was 14 years old. And then when I was 17, I went to France to get farther away, but also to learn about French cooking because there was this restaurant in Dijon who came and did a weekly gastronomic week in the hotel where I worked. And I said, oh my God, they cook with wine. Our chef only drinks the wine. So it was crazy. And, they make escargot, they make pâtés, they made coq au vin, they made beef bourguignon, and all these different things. They cook different fish. First time I saw a fresh salmon, they cooked fresh salmon fillets and so forth. So I said, I want to learn how to cook that way. So I went to Dijon when I was 17. After a year or so, the owner and chef threw a party for the employees. I had no idea what it was. I didn't speak French at the beginning. I learned little by little. And then I found out we gained a star in the Guide Michelin. And, in France at that time, the Guide Michelin was the most important thing. And so I took one book, one of these red guides, and looked through it. And I said, oh my God, we have 1 star, but there are 2 star and 3 star restaurants. So I said, okay, I'm not going back to Austria. Even I had a girlfriend who her parents had a little hotel, and I thought I'm going to be the chef and we're going to run the hotel one day. So I said, I have to work in a 3 star restaurant. And God willing, I found one, and I wrote to every chef, Bocuse, Trois Gros, La Serre in Paris, Roger Verger at the Moulin Mougin in Cannes, and so forth. Then the first one who responded, yes, we can give you a job, was Raymond Thuillier at Beaumanière. And I arrived there in this little town of 350 people. And I said, oh my God, how can anybody have a 3 star restaurant here? So little by little, I found out he not only had a restaurant, but he had rooms. He had beautiful gardens where he grew all his own vegetables, fruits, and berries, and melons, you name it. And he also had an olive groves, and he was making wine. And at that time, Mr. Tullier is his name. He was 72 years old. He was so passionate about food and hospitality. A lot of chefs today forget about hospitality is just as important, if not even more important than the food. You know, you can buy a good steak and grill it perfectly. If you don't make the guy happy and you don't make them welcome or say thank you, they might not come back. So Juliet was so amazing. I still remember he brought guests in the kitchen. We had a very nice kitchen and everything, not something like Trogro today or whatever. But it was very nice, and he showed them around. I remember he brought Pablo Picasso in the kitchen. And I was making a duck sauce, and at that time we made the duck sauce really red, with red food coloring in it too. It was a duck à l'orange, and he was saying it's blood oranges, you know. And I remember Picasso looking in the rondo in the casserole and said, "What are you making? Are you painting something?" I said, "No, no, it's my duck sauce." You know, at that time I knew Picasso was famous, but to me it was just another artist. You know, it wasn't like today. So, and Elizabeth Taylor, he brought Elizabeth Taylor in the kitchen. That's 19, 20-year-old guys. We are just looking at her, the most beautiful woman in the world. But his passion for cooking, that everything had to be super, super quality. You know, if it was the peas or the beans coming from the garden or the melons or the Mara de Bois strawberries, whatever it was everything was first class. And we made our own olive oil. I remember in November it was very slow, so we had to pick olives in the grove. And then for us it was fun. We were out there smoking cigarettes and picking olives. But I think he was so passionate about the food, the way everything was done. It's the first time I saw it, he didn't use any flour in the sauce. It was all cream and butter, you know. I always think, obviously, more butter, it tastes better, you know, and it's really, part of it, it's really true. So to me, his passion rubbed up on me. And I said, I want to be like him. I want to be like Raymond Tullier, one day own my own restaurant and one day maybe write a book. So he really set the North Star for me. And I said, you know what? This is my idol. He's my mentor. I want to be like him.
Wow. When you were cooking at Ma Maison and you decided that it was time for you to own your own restaurant, one of the things I found fascinating, you were already doing a cooking school at that point. Was anybody doing a cooking school in LA in a restaurant at that time?
No, nobody was doing a cooking school. And
I mean, just one of the many ways you've innovated our industry.
Yeah.
But that was even how you found investors for Spago, right?
Exactly. So I started this cooking school called Ma Cuisine, my kitchen, because the restaurant was Ma Maison, my house. So I started it, and I thought, you know, okay, people just will come, but it wasn't so easy because I couldn't teach all the classes, you know, because I was running the restaurant. So I invited different chefs. I remember Julia Child come. I remember Maida Hida, who is a famous pastry chef.
Yeah,
you know, she wrote great books. I remember she came and she went in the morning to my friend Yuki, a hairdresser, to get her hair done and makeup and everything to look good. And it was in the middle of the summer, and I remember her chocolate book came out. So she was making the Queen Anne chocolate cake and had everything prepared. She came with a chest full of material, of mixers, molds, whatever you need. She brought everything with her. And so she sifted everything and had everything lined up on the table. You know, at that time, the cooking school I wasn't participation, as people were watching. And all the people complained. I remember we had Betty White and Susie Plachette and some of the Hollywood people, you know, and they said, "Oh, Wolfgang, you didn't pay the electrician. Know what? It's so hot in here." And then finally I said, okay, I'm going to go to the restaurant. And we had this big fan in the restaurant to blow the air around a little bit because it was so hot. We had a covered patio, so there was no air condition. So I put the fan in there and to blow it out the kitchen. And I turned it on. It was a huge thing. And all of a sudden, the flour, the cocoa powder, everything, it was like a dust storm. I said, oh my God. And I see Maida, chocolate all over, flour all over. I said, oh shit, she is going to leave now.
Oh my God, I love
She
that.
wiped herself off and said, okay, let's start all over again. I said, thanks God she did not leave. I said, I'm going to have to reimburse 30 or 40 people the money they paid already and upset her and never come back and give us bad publicity. So this whole thing was going through my mind. And, at the end of the day, she did a class. It was amazing. We became best friends. I visit her often in Miami. She was on Normandy Island, I remember, right on the water there. And we did things together. I remember we did cooking classes together in Palm Springs, up in Monterey, and different places in the world. And I think she became one of my dearest friends. And her husband, Ralph, who unfortunately passed away early on, also was a very good friend. And so I think a story which started really bad ended up like a great friendship for a lifetime.
I love that. I love that. Betty White. My wife will love to know that Betty White was at that class.
Mm-hmm.
How the idea of Spago, so especially for me on the East Coast, um, so many things. The first open kitchen,
Yeah.
the wood burning oven that was not pepperoni or cheese.
Yeah.
I mean, and of course you put creme fraiche, salmon, and caviar on a pizza,
Yeah.
and literally changed the world. You gave permission for pizza to be different.
Yeah.
How did all of these ideas and the infusion of Asian, which I want to talk about, I'll ask that in a separate question.
Yeah.
But how did all of those things come to you? Why
So-
an open kitchen? Because out of our 40 restaurants, 38 are open kitchens.
Yeah.
So I have you to thank.
So, the funny thing is, so when I found this location up on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, and I have some of the guys who came to my cooking schools, I asked them to invest money. And a few doctors, a few dentists, a few shrinks, they said, okay. So I raised $500,000 through my cooking school. And also I borrowed from the bank $60,000. I didn't have the money. So with about $550,000, we opened Spago. And I saw at that time, Patrick Terray, who is his uncle owned La Tour d'Argent at that time.
Mhm.
He was the owner of Ma Maison. And I told him, and I owned just a little part. So I told Patrick, we have to form a restaurant company where we are 50-50. And I've already found our next location up on Sunset Boulevard. And I want to do this restaurant like I saw in south of France. When I worked at Beaumanière in Salon de Provence, there was a restaurant called Chez Gu. And it was a lot of fun. And a lot of artists after their concerts used to come. He often didn't even open until 10 o'clock at night. But at 2 in the morning, the restaurant was packed and people were having a great time and dancing. And he was making pizzas, and he was making just a simple pepper steak and a salad with garlic and croutons, like a little, what we maybe had similar to a Caesar salad, but they made a frisee salad. So I said, I want to open a thing like that. And I explained it to Patrick. And then I said, but we have to be 50-50 as a business, He looked at me and pointed the finger at me and said, I always will own 51%. And I looked at him and said, I always will own 51% then too. And that was the end. Thank God today that he didn't say, okay, let's do it.
Right.
For 1%,
Wow.
I mean, it's crazy and lucky for me. So then when I had to leave Ma Maison, because I didn't want to leave before we were so successful, and I had Orson Welles and Jack Lemmon and you name it. Every big star used to come to the restaurant.
Yeah.
And I remember my favorite one was always Paul Newman because I love race cars and he was a race car driver.
Me too.
So, yeah. And so I didn't want to leave. And we were doing really well. Lunch and dinner, we were always busy. We were in the top 10 restaurants in America and so forth. And but then I had to leave. So then I said, okay, I'm going to have to upgrade that new restaurant. By the way, we call it Spago. And Spago actually came from a friend of mine, Giorgio Moroder, who is a big musician. He did all the synthesized music for Donna Summer, like Love
Oh,
to Love Your Baby. And
sure, sure.
he did Midnight Express and Top Gun and made, I don't know, a ton of money at that time. And he was supposed to give me the $500,000. But then at the end, and he said, "We're gonna call it Spago." I said, "I don't care what you call it, as long as you give me the money." When you're desperate,
Said
doing
every
something.
new restaurateur raising money.
Yeah. And so finally, we couldn't agree on a business. So he said, "Okay, I'm gonna own 60% and you're gonna own 40%." I said, "No. If we don't do it 50-50, I said, I give you 60%, 70% if you want to. When I pay you back, I'm going to get 70% and you're going to get 30%. Right. He says, no way. Or his business manager said, no way. So that's how I raised the money through my cooking school, thank God. And some of them are pretty old already because I was at that time like in my late 20s. And, they were like in their 40s. And I still have one guy, Don Salk. He still comes to the restaurant. He's in his early 90s. And his thing is to be grateful. It's such a big thing in life. He comes to the restaurant and says, Wolfgang, you made our life better. And I said, how? You had a great practice as a dentist and everything. He says, you gave us a business card. It says Spago by Wolfgang Puck underneath maybe, and then owner Don Salk. And he used to go to Danielle or any of these restaurants in New York and gave the maitre d' their business card, and right away they rolled out the red carpet, and they thought he was the most important part in the dining room. And I remember he said, I went with some friends who went every month or every 2 months to Danielle and knew them too. They never got free appetizer. They never got a glass of champagne before, but because he came with Don, it was it. So we made our life better, but we made their life better. They invested the money. They got paid back in 1.5 years, which is amazing.
That's great.
And Spago became such a huge success. So when I opened, I always wanted to do this pizza oven I saw in Salon de Provence. And so we built this pizza oven. I found a guy up in San Francisco, a mason who used to make fireplaces, but pizza oven is basically a fireplace. And I wanted to have an open kitchen. Why? Because I said, I want to see what's going on in the dining room, because I'm going to be not only the chef, but I'm going to be also the manager of the restaurant. I want to see what's going on. So we really built a stage at that time. My ex-wife, Barbara, built the kitchen. I looked at the colors. I told her exactly what I need. And we had like stage light shining down on the working table in front of us. And all the VIPs were sitting all around us. So it was like we were really the stage, the center of the restaurant. And that became like this big thing afterwards. But for me, it was a necessity because I said, I want to see what's going on in the dining room and also have fun. And also keep the kitchen quiet. I said, nobody can yell when you're in front of the guests except me once in a while. And then I said, oh, shit.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so we opened up, and that was something totally new at that time. Also, Spago then had white tablecloths. We made pizzas, but we always, because I had the pizza oven, but I used it to roast our lamb in it. I used to roast our salmon in it, and obviously pizzas and some calzone. And we made the calzone with truffles. We made pizzas at the beginning, like, in America, pepperonis are so big. I said, I'm not going to do pepperoni. I'm going to make duck sausage. So I used the duck legs and stuffed them with duck force meat and rolled them, cooked them really slow and sliced them thin and put that on a pizza with some shiitake mushrooms, maybe some caramelized onion, a little fontina cheese, and so forth.
I've had that pizza many, many times.
Yeah, so it was amazing to see, and people used to come then all the time. I remember Linda Evans, whenever she was in town, she used to come like every other day to the restaurant, have a light beer or a glass of red wine, and have her pizza and the salad, and so many others on too. So
I had such a crush on her when she was on Dynasty.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness.
Yeah, no, she was amazing. And so then I was very good friends also with Billy Wilder, the Austrian director and, writer, producer, whatever he was. So he used to come to Ma Maison already. And I remember when I opened Spago, like 2 weeks into it, he came with a group of 8 or 10 people. I still remember it was Gregory Peck, it was Joan Collins, it was Billy,
God.
and Billy and his wife Audrey, and I think Freddie de Cordova or somebody else who was big at that time in Hollywood, was at the table. And there was a writer for the Hollywood Reporter, may he rest in peace, George Christie, who wrote the first article about us and says, not only is the food different, but it tastes really fresh. It tastes really like you would be somewhere in Italy in a small restaurant, and you can see the chefs cooking and everything. And he wrote at the end, he says, and if you don't make a reservation today, you will never get one. So he put a number underneath. There were no cell phones or anything,
Right.
or no internet at that time. And sure enough, the restaurant took over to my wildest dream. At that time, Barbara and myself went on Thursday night to the flower market. Barbara used to do all the flowers. We went to the flower market, and then I went to the fish market. And I got home like at 6 in the morning. I went to sleep for 3 hours, went back to the restaurant because Friday is always a big day, and we were cooking until midnight every day. And Barbara was doing the flowers, and it was a lot of work, but it was fun to seeing this crazy thing take off like a rocket ship. And everybody wrote about it, people talked about it. This is the biggest thing. And naturally, people came from all over the world to look at the restaurant. I remember some people from Japan came over and interviewed me, and I showed them the kitchen. They took pictures and put it in a magazine. And then somebody in Tokyo said, okay, they read the magazine. They came, looked at it, and said, why we don't open a restaurant, Spago, in Tokyo? I said, sir, I cannot run one restaurant properly. I'm there until 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, figuring out how I can accommodate everybody. Because people used to call me and say, Wolfgang, some phone call for you. So-and-so, Sidney Beckerman or David Begelman or somebody is calling, and they want a table for 6 for tonight. It was 3 in the afternoon. And when I said yes, if I said no, they say F you, and hung up the phone.
Right.
So I didn't want to upset them. So we have people waiting for tables who we didn't know, who made reservations like 2 months ago.
Right.
And but for me, it was like crazy. And I said no to the Japanese. I don't want to open a restaurant. And then they came back a few months later and says, here is the plans. We're going to open it with you or without you. I said, what? I said, yes, you heard us. And I said, okay, let's open it with me. So I took my team to Tokyo, which was a great experience for me. We opened Spago there, and it ran for 20 years. And then I was so tired. I said, I don't want to have another Spago. I see the same food, the same chairs, the same artwork on the walls, and I want to do, I don't want to do Spago anymore. So there's a guy in Santa Monica who came up to me and says, I have this perfect place on Main Street there. You should open a Spago there. It's far enough away from Hollywood. People in Santa Monica don't want to drive so far. And I said, so I don't want to open Spago anymore. I'm going to do Chinese food now. I like as a joke. So I said, I didn't want to tell him no because he was a good customer at Spago already. So, and he said, okay, I know if you're going to do Chinese food, it's going to be different. It's going to be good. So then I said, oh, no. Now I have to do that again. We raised $1 million already at that time, and Barbara built the restaurant. During that time, I had to figure out, what do I gonna do? I used to go to Chinatown all the time to eat on my day off.
Right.
Already when I was at Ma Maison on Sundays, I used to eat at Chinatown more than in any other restaurant. And so I said, now I have to do it the way I feel Chinese food or Asian food should be. So I still remember Jerry Weintraub. He was a big producer, of Ocean's 11 and many of these things.
Of course.
He comes up in the kitchen. He was sitting next to me at Spago and said, Wolfgang, I'm excited. You're going to have a Chinese restaurant. I love Chinese food. Are you going to make fried rice? I said, oh, yeah, for sure. I had to go back and look how you make fried rice. I never knew how to make it,
Right.
So, and then
and the Chinese chicken salad, baby.
Yeah. Woo! So we started these things with chinois. We called the restaurant chinois because I said we have French techniques, but with Chinese flavors or Asian flavors. Some of them might have been more Thai, Indian, or some of them a little Japanese.
Right.
Like I remember I had a Japanese chef who I hired there, and he knew about Japanese food, obviously. And we made a tempura sashimi. I didn't want to make traditional sashimi or things like that, or nigiris and things like that. So, and we made this tempura sashimi, and I said, okay, you make the tempura sashimi, I will make the sauce. So I made a sea urchin sauce, a creamy sea urchin sauce with some wasabi in it, a little spice in it, super rich with cream, and I reduced some champagne with some shallots and everything. So it was like a French-Asian mixture. And it became so popular. But again, I said, I have to change it. I can't see the same thing. So one day in the summer, maybe it was the second year into it, I said, I'm going to change the sauce. This is too rich for the summer, you know. And I made something with tomatoes. And a guest came up to me and said, when he ate it, he said, what is that? And I said, well, it's our tempura sashimi. He said, that's not a tempura sashimi. I said, yeah, it is. And then finally, he called the waiter over and says, tell Wolfgang, this is not a tempura sashimi. I like it with the sea urchin sauce and with everything. So he calls me over to the table, and I explained to him, sir, you know, I got tired making the same thing all the time. And he told me, you know, if I'm not tired eating it, you shouldn't be tired of cooking it. And I said, you know what, you have a point. You are absolutely right.
That is all the young chefs out there.
Yeah. We cook for the guests, not for us.
Right.
So I think a lot of the young chefs out there think it's about them. It's about how did I do, instead of seeing how did the guests enjoy the food. Do they actually come back and try it again and eating again? And we had recipes like when I made the Chinois chicken salad, you know, it became like a standard from all over America now. It's crazy.
I've had it. I mean, I had it at Chinois, but I bet I've had it in 25 restaurants.
Yeah.
Did you have an idea? Because I remember, you know, so in the South, we were a little bit slower to warm up to raw fish, and you know, we're there now. But I can remember in the 90s, the first time I had a piece of seared yellowfin tuna that was raw in the middle with the soy and the wasabi, which obviously came from you. And the term California Asian, at least on the East Coast, became, did you, and maybe this is for your entire career, did you have any idea? I mean, you literally were influencing a nation. Did you have any sense? Was it after you started seeing people copy you, or did you? Because I mean, I can say across the whole East Coast, California Asian. I mean, it was you, Jeremiah Tower, Allison, of course, and Shea Penny. But did you have any sense of that you were influencing the entire country?
I think it was an interesting thing because I always like to do things my way. I'm always very curious. I always like to learn. So why did I open Chinois? It was a big school for me because I had to learn and figure out how do I gonna make Chinese food or Asian food, whatever you might call it, you know. And so I said, okay, like in the South, I remember I went somewhere in Longview, Texas, or somewhere out there, or near Shreveport, Louisiana. They had fried catfish. It's very popular. And I thought, oh, this is really good. So I saw downtown and in Chinatown, the catfish. And so I asked the guy, what do you do with it? The one said, oh, we steam it or we fry it or whatever. So I got this like over a foot long catfish, enough for 2-3 people. And because I had a wok fryer, so I filled the wok with oil and keep it pretty hot. Just get the fish, and I made incisions on each side, put a slice of ginger in it, dusted it with starch, and then seasoned salt and pepper, and fried them, and made like a ponzu sauce with it.
Yeah.
And served it with fried rice or something, and people really loved it because it was crispy and it had good flavor. So at the end, I think it's all about, is it really delicious? You know, that's what I tell the chefs. Yes, it's important to try to do new things. Yes, it's important to move forward a little bit, but it's also important to keep tradition. But at the end of the day, it's really, would you like to go back here once a month and eat it again? So I think it's very important, especially for young chefs out there, when they create a dish, create almost like a craving for it, that the guest's gonna come back and say, wow, I remember this flavor, I want that again. The catfish we started 42 years ago It's still on the menu today. It's still very popular.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of dishes. Like I love baking duck. It's one of my favorite preparation of anything. You know,
Right.
when you get a great baking duck, there's nothing better.
Very few people make it. It's hard. It's hard on the East Coast to find it.
Yeah, it's hard on the East Coast. It's hard everywhere to find a really good one. Even in China, it's very hard to find a good one. I couldn't find a good one in Beijing. So I said, you know, how can that happen? I got
Right.
some really good ones in Hong Kong and
Yeah.
Shanghai, but not in Beijing. So I think, so I said, I want to make a baking style duck, but not exactly like they do in the Chinese restaurant because they already did it. So I said, okay, I'm gonna have the preparation like they do, you know, where you dry the duck with fans and blanch them for 10 seconds and put some spices inside, blow them up. I remember, so I was already at Spago. I said, I want to do my baking duck, but to make the skins crispy, you have to separate the skin from the meat. How they do it? With a compressor. Well, I didn't have a compressor in the restaurant. So I took my ducks to the gas station down the street, and I was sitting in my station wagon with my ducks, and I was blowing up the ducks here, and you could see the people going by and saying, "What the heck is this guy doing
Oh
with
my
ducks
God.
here at the gas
I
station?"
love that. That's
Yeah,
so good.
so I started out because I didn't have the thing, but I knew how to do it a little bit because I used to go to Chinatown all the time, and my friend had like a Chinese deli where he sold the ducks and everything. And then I said, I don't want to just give people hoisin sauce and the Chinese pancakes. I want to make my own plum sauce. So I bought all
I
this.
love that plum sauce.
Yeah, I loved all. I bought all these elephant heart plums. You know, they're really
Mhm.
red inside, and I cooked them with plum wine, ginger, spices, and everything. And that's how I serve the duck. And it's still popular today, and I still really love it that way. You
Yeah.
know, so I think some of the dishes I created at that time, are still super popular today,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's one of the reasons the restaurant is still open. How many restaurants they open as long as we have Spago and Chinois? You know, of over 40
Very
years,
few.
Spago 44, Chinois 43, very, very few. When you look in New York, all the old restaurants from Le Cirque to Lutèce to La Caravelle, you name them,
They're gone.
21 Club,
Mhm.
Maxwell Blum, they're all gone.
All gone.
None could survive. But also, they didn't have a vision that you have to change, but you have to keep tradition. And people always ask me, Wolfgang, what is your success? I think, you know, we honor and we love tradition, but we also love innovation. So you mix these two together, you get a good chance of people coming back. You know, if you go back and have the same chicken all the time, you say, okay, I'm get enough. Maybe there's something else out there. But if you change it also and still have that too, I mean, it's crazy. I have a good customer, still comes to our restaurant from Ma Maison. So he must be in his mid 70s or something like that.
Wow.
I was in Maui. We have Spago in Maui.
Mhm.
He comes with his whole family there. And he says, Wolfgang, can you make me the chicken with the mustard sauce you made at Ma Maison? I said, how do you know that? He said, you know, I still remember the flavor of the chicken from Ma
Wow.
Maison. So I made it for him, and that made his whole holiday. I
I
think
bet.
he told all his friends, I went to Spago in Maui, and Wolfgang made me a dish from Ma Maison, which I crave.
I love that. One of the other innovations that I would love to hear about, you were the first chef, in my opinion, to go to Las Vegas.
Yeah,
And Vegas was buffets and the food was absolute crap. And I remember in the 90s, you were the first chef
yeah.
who went and did Spago. A dear friend of mine worked for you then. And tell me, did you just think Las Vegas was ready, or are you just somebody who likes a new challenge?
Okay, I love a new challenge, but that's one. And the second one, I'm a big fan of boxing.
Okay.
Boxing, it used to be all behind Caesar's Palace. They built this arena there and everything. And I saw Marvin Hagler and Leonard and Tommy Hearns and
Mhm.
Riddick Bowe, you name them all, and Roberto Duran. So all these fighters, I used to fly with a friend of mine, with Marvin Davis. We used to go to the fights. And when Sheldon Gordon came up to me, and next to Caesars, they were building a shopping mall.
Right.
And I said, I don't know if I want to be in a shopping malls. And finally, he was a good customer of ours, and I knew him well. He said, and he bugged me and bugged me. You should open Spago in Vegas. It's going to be amazing. Finally, I said, Sheldon, if you find me the money, if you pay for it, and I get 50% and you get 50% with your investors or whoever it is, I'm fine. Then we do it. He said, no problem. He came back maybe a week later. He said, okay, I got the commitment for $5 million and we're going to build Spago at the Forum. So we built Spago at the Forum. We opened in end of November in 92. Well, at that time, after Thanksgiving until Christmas, Vegas was dead. And I remember I met already Siegfried and Roy, who had the big show at the Mirage. And I call up Siegfried and I said, oh, I just opened Spago here. Are you going to come by? We are right next to the Mirage and everything. And he said, I'm in Germany. I'm not here. I said, oh, my God. And there was no business. We got a great write-up in the Las Vegas Tribune or whatever it's called there. And that night, 60 guests came to the restaurant. And I had like 9 waiter stations. And the restaurant business, so you didn't even have one table per station. So I said, oh my God, this is going to be the biggest disaster. I knew it's going to be bad because people give away food in the buffets. You eat for free. Even it's terrible. People load up their places. And then I think I had to go home and I rented an apartment there. I had to drink a bottle of Cabernet every night to go to sleep. I think I was half drunk to fall asleep. If not, I was so worried. I said, this never going to work. Sure enough, the holidays come, New Year's come, the restaurant took off. A week into January, which is normally a slow week in restaurants, New York or here in LA, they started CES, Consumer Electronics Show, and they had 100,000 people come to Vegas. A line out of Spago out the door. I didn't know what to do. And at that time, we were the only restaurant there. So Spago became a huge hit there. And I remember Larry Wolf was the president of the MGM, who had just opened also. And he came to the restaurant and said, Wolfgang, can you build a Spago in the MGM? I said, no, I can't. I have a restriction. I only can do it in Clark County. So then I said, okay, but the MGM is a more downscale hotel anyway, and it's not like Caesars at that time used to be the hotel there in the Mirage. So we decided to open a restaurant there. And so I went to see and said, okay, but let's do a bar and grill, a more downscale restaurant. And then he showed me what others going to be there in this avenue in the hotel, basically. And says, oh, we're going to have a Mexican restaurant here. We're going to have a fish restaurant over here. So I said, Larry, why we don't call Mark Miller, who has this amazing new style Mexican restaurant in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and maybe he wants to do it. He said, I never heard about it. So I called Mark and I said, send me your book and send me your menu and everything. I showed it to him. And then Mark said, okay, let's do the restaurant there. And then the same thing happened with Emerald. So I said, Emerald was brand new in New Orleans, and I was very good friends with Paul Prudhomme, obviously with Emerald and a few other people down there. And so then Emerald come there. So I was a year and a half ahead of everyone. But then all of a sudden they came and they changed the whole thing.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
And then Steve Wynn did Bellagio.
Yeah.
And then
the Palazzo and Venetian and everything. Yeah. So now.
Well, my wife likes to go to Vegas because of the restaurant. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah. So now
she's not a gambler.
Every chef has a restaurant there. And it's a great place to go because you have great shows. I mean, even like next to the Venetian, like if you stay at the Venetian or the Palazzo, they have the Sphere, this new theater. Yeah. I remember when I went for the opening and they had U2 playing, which is one of my favorite bands too, but the whole experience was amazing. Right. And then before you could have a little appetizer at Cut, we have Cut over there, and then go afterwards for another drink. So I think it's a perfect experience, and you don't need a taxi, you don't need the Uber, you don't have to drive anywhere, you have it all there.
Right.
So it's a perfect place just if you like to do something different. And now you have so many sports. You have the Raiders there.
Yeah.
You have the Golden Knights hockey team there.
Hmm.
So Las Vegas has become this entertainment or the number one entertainment city in the world,
Right.
and it's so amazing. When we started there, Spago in 92, Las Vegas had 700,000 people there. Now it's 2.5 million.
Wow.
It's crazy how it has grown over the last 30 years.
Yeah. Tell me, I remember, I think I remember, tell me about, because at the time, again, no one was doing this. HSN.
Mm.
Suddenly I looked up and there's Wolfgang Puck on TV selling pots and
Selling pots and
pans.
pans, yeah.
And so, not only was that sort of a time, Food Network had not started yet, Emerald, all of that was but chef as a celebrity had never really been done in America. You're doing the Oscars, the
Yeah.
Emmys. How did all of that sort of come about?
TV really started already when I was at Ma Maison. And, I still remember there was a lady named Dinah Shore. Your
Of course,
parents
yeah.
probably know her
Oh,
really
I
well.
know Dinah Shore.
Yeah, so Dinah Shore had a very popular TV show, and I didn't know. I didn't watch TV at that time. I was cooking all the time. So Dinah Shore used to come to Ma Maison and ask me to be on TV to cook. And Patrick said, no, Wolfgang doesn't like TV. I do the TV, because he was so pompous and everything.
Yeah.
So he said, I'm going to do this TV show. Make me a fish en croûte. I remember I used to make a fish en croûte like Paul Bocuse makes
Yeah.
it, and some salads and a dessert. And he just like cut it up and put it on the plate and said, this is, our specialty. And one day Dinah Shore came to the restaurant and she had dinner and she said, Wolfgang, she called me out. She said, sit down with me. And she said, Wolfgang, you're actually so nice. The food is delicious and you are very friendly and everything. Why you don't want to come on my TV show? I said, because you never asked me. And she said, Patrick, that son of a bitch, he always told me you don't want to do TV. I said, no, I will do it. If you ask me, I come. And so that started. And then Mike Ovitz who was at that time the head of CAA, the most powerful agency, for actors and all that thing, and singers, you name them. So he comes to Spago. That was already later. He comes to Spago. I got a new cookbook out in 85 or 86. And I think it was his wife's Judy's birthday. And I sign here my cookbook, happy birthday, Judy, and bring it to here. And Mike grabs it and says, how come I didn't know about that? Where you promoted? What's going on here? I said, well, I promoted. I did the AM Los Angeles. I did the show up in Seattle and everything. And he says, you cannot do that. You have to go on national TV. You cannot go from city to city and not be in a restaurant for a year, to do every local show. He said, yes, my PR person tried to get me on Good Morning America, but they said they don't want me because they have Julia Childs already, and I don't know what happened at the Today Show then. So he said, what? They don't want you? Let me call the president of ABC News on Monday or the next day. So he called them up. The guy came out and said, okay, so Mike brought the president to Spago, and Mike said, cook us a nice dinner, show him the book. And then Mike wrote on a napkin a contract that Wolfgang gonna be once a month on Good Morning America, and the guy signed it. So then I started Good Morning America, and I was so nervous at that time because they had this tall guy, David Hartman, who was the head guy there. And he was like 6'4", 6'5", and he looked down and talked like, Wolfgang, so what you're going to do? And I always tried to do everything from A to Z there, not to have the things underneath already done. I remember one time I did this chocolate souffle. So I had to time it exactly, not just showing them melting the chocolate, folding in the eggs, the egg whites and everything, but then you have to cook it and you only have 5 minutes. So I had to put it on the right time in the oven and taking it out. Everybody was nervous except me. I said, you know what? I know if I time it right, if you don't go over that thing, it's okay. And, I said, okay, put it in the oven and you take it out. And they said, oh, I remember the producer said, oh my God, thank God it came out. What about if it would have been flat, So I always did that. Or cook the fish, like the little filet, I cut them thin and seared them on one side really well. and I didn't really cook them on the other side.
Yeah.
And that's a total new things. Like
Right.
today, searing the fish on the skin side really well, and just that it cooks through slowly and it will taste amazing. I did it in the 80s because I had to,
Right.
because I didn't have the time. So I had to have a thin fillet. I didn't have a thick salmon or black bass or whatever it was. So it was amazing that I did that. So that's how it started with TB. And then became good friends with Ron Popeil. Ron Popeil was famous already at that time on, I think, on QVC and QVC, I think so. And he did a pasta machine. And he showed me, he talked to me and what pastas I made. He was a good customer. He came to Spago every Friday for lunch. And so I looked at him and he had his show. And I said, Jesus Christ, he's not a chef. Why is he doing that? And one of my good customers too was managing him. So I told him, how come Ron Popeil is on TV and not me selling stuff? I could do it too. He said, okay, we can try it out. So we tried it out. I made some pots and pans in China and brought them over. And I made them exactly the way I had them in a restaurant, except they were pretty expensive. So, and I didn't know how to do it. I brought an ice chest with me with a few dishes to make a table. And I remember at QVC, they had a round stage, but if you didn't do well, the stage just moved and you were gone. And like I was cooking, I didn't know how to sell. I was cooking like crazy. And then all of a sudden, I see no more TV cameras in front of me. So I did that 2-3 times in Pennsylvania, in Chester, Pennsylvania. And then it didn't work. And then we had a lot of inventory left. And there was the other network called HSN. And I studied a little bit how they do it. And little by little, I learned how to sell things. I'm also made some parts a little cheaper than they were before, so that way it fits into the demographic of who is watching that
Right.
channel. So, and then it became more and more successful. Then we went into electronics. So now I'm the second oldest, or not second longest, presenter on HSN. So I started in the mid 90s or so, and I'm still there. Though I must say this whole thing has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Because with Amazon and everything you can get online today, and even faster than on TV. You don't have to watch television to figure something out. You can do it at home and watch any thing on a podcast or whatever it is and find out what you want. But I'm still going. I don't want to stop it yet. But I think sooner or later, this kind of business might not work as well. So we'll see. I still have booked myself 4 times this year on HSN.
I love that. What does it mean to you? So, after this incredible career that is clearly not done, which I love, your son
Yeah.
is now in the business. I have a younger daughter that I hope someday will work in our restaurant group. What does that mean for you?
For me, it's the most exciting thing. I remember when Byron, my son, who is now 31, when he was 13 years old, we had the bar mitzvah for him. And we invited all of our customers. We had like 500 people.
Wow.
And then he had to give a speech too. I talked a little bit, my ex-wife talked a little bit, Barbara talked about it. And then he had to read the Torah and then made a speech, what life means to him or whatever. And then he looks at me and says, and don't worry, Dad, I will take over the restaurant one day. Okay. I said, okay, I'm happy with that. So come summer, I said, remember what you said at the bar mitzvah, that you're going to take over the restaurant? You're going to have to work at least for a month in the restaurant. You have to start now. I started also very young, when my mother was a chef too. So every summer I used to go and help her at this resort hotel, cooking with the pastry chef or whatever they had me do. So I said, okay, come on Monday, you come by the restaurant and ask the manager to show you around and where you're going to work. Okay, the manager was waiting for him, took him to the pastry station, the appetizer station, where I do all the prep work in the back, and then he ended up at the dishwasher, and he told him, okay, this is going to be your station for the next month, so you can start tomorrow. And I'm sure in his head, he thought he's going to be cooking or grilling or whatever, or making pizzas. And but he started and he never flinched. And it was actually amazing. He was in high school then, and he started actually a molecular gastronomy cooking class
Good
at
Lord.
Harvard Westlake. And
Oh,
I sent my
wow.
young chefs to show them how to make this fair and how you add different things and they react differently and everything. So it was really interesting. And already then he was still in high school. I remember I sent him to Nobu in London. He worked with Nobu and he learned how to hold a knife right and how to cook, how to cut something right. I remember the chef made him slice chives. And, the first one he did, one was a little longer, one a little shorter. He said, okay, good job. And he threw it away. And then he just looked and said, why did he throw it away? He said, okay, you saw how I showed you how to do them. So he did it one more time. Again, the same result. And then finally, for the third time, he said, okay, I better pay attention and cut them really all the same size. So when he was at that time, maybe 16 or so, 15, 16. So he was in London by himself too. So I wasn't there. Even we had cut in London already at that time. And then I didn't want him to work at Cut in London because everybody said, oh, it's Wolfgang's son. We have to be nice
Right,
to him,
right, right.
So I thought that Novo is a good friend. And he said, no problem. We put him there. And so it ended up afterwards when he went to Cornell, which is, a great hospitality
Mm-hmm.
school, because it's also important for young people to get a good education because there are enough people out there who always want to take advantage of you. You get excited doing a restaurant, you put it even your name up, and then you get into a fight with the investor, and then you're gone,
Right.
if you don't own the majority. So he went to Cornell and then he worked at restaurants like Guy Savoy in Paris. He worked with the Roca brothers in Girona and near Barcelona in Spain. He worked at Beaumanière with the grandson of Mr. Tuillier 50 years after me, which really is an amazing thing.
Wow, that's incredible.
He worked at the best. I said, you have to learn about my history, a little bit about Austria. So he worked at Steiereck, which is the best restaurant in Austria, a 3-star restaurant too. So he got a really good experience in the kitchen because I told him, if you want to carry on, innovation is an important part. But you can't be fooled by newness. If it's just something looks good to the eye, but it doesn't taste right, or it's not really delicious, why do it? You have to really do
So
it right.
important.
Yeah.
So important.
A lot of people think, yeah, we all say we eat with our eyes first. But if it looks great and it doesn't taste great, you're going to say, okay, all show and no substance.
Right.
So it's really an important part to do that. And I think he's also great in management. I send him to Jakarta. We are opening in Jakarta, or we open something in Perth, or wherever it is now. I send him so people get used to him. And he said, okay, my dad will be coming too, but I do the work. So he talks with the people really well. He's a very good manager, but he also knows how to manage the people in a new way.
Right.
Like not the way I was treated. So you have to treat people right. And sometimes if I get upset, I still get a little bit harsh with words maybe on somebody. And these days you have to be so careful what you say because people right away take it out of proportions and it's very, very difficult. And everybody has a lawyer. If the dishwasher has a lawyer, the waiter and busboys have lawyers. So everybody has their own lawyer and they try to get something, even if they're wrong. I remember one time at Spago, I had one of our assistant managers stealing wine. We caught him on camera with 12 bottles of wine in 2 bags walking out. I fired him, and then he sued me.
Oh, wow.
And
Good.
the insurance paid him $30,000
For stealing wine.
for stealing wine. Yeah.
That is a shame.
It's crazy because they didn't want to go through the thing to court and everything. They said, oh, it's cheaper, let's just pay them off.
Let's just pay them off.
And it's not the right way. So I think obviously these are exceptions. We have people who work with me for so many years. We have boss boys who started young at 25, 30. Now they are 60 years old. Now their kids are working with us. So,
I love that.
So we have really a great group of people. And, at the end, it's all about the people. It's all about how you treat your employees. And if we wouldn't treat them well, if they wouldn't think they have a future with us, they wouldn't be with us. So a lot of them are still in the same position, but they love it. They make a good living. They send their kids to school here. And, we really have to thank, the Latin community. Now when you look all the bad press there is about them, you know what?
Yeah.
There are so many amazing people who come from Latin America or South America or from
Yes.
Asia. And I think when you look the way they are treated these days, and we are all people, I think for me, I can't believe that actually we are here in America, and we
Right.
say we are the land of the free. And, obviously they should secure the border. I think every country does that. And there should be immigration, but it should be regulated. I'm all for that. But at the end, you have to treat the people the way you want to be treated.
Amen. A few more questions, and I'll let you enjoy your day. Um, what does the word hospitality mean to you?
Well, to me, it's a very simple thing. Hospitality, we are in the hospitality business. Cooking is part of it, but it's the way you make the guests feel. So if you pay $10 or $100, it doesn't matter. If you feel really good, you're gonna go back. You're gonna, maybe if you don't have a lot of money, you said, okay, I'm gonna go once a year for my anniversary. Or if you have money, you say, okay, they really made me feel good. I really like the service. I like the way I'm treated. The food was delicious. They will go back and go back and go back. And when you really look at our business, where we are there for so long, even in Vegas, 33 years, 34 years now in Las
Incredible.
Vegas, over 40 years here in LA. So it is really an amazing thing. So the hospitality business is, how do you make people feel? If you make them feel good, they will come back. You're going to have regulars. If they don't feel really good, they might not come back because there are so many choices out there. And I feel blessed to say that we have a great team, because it's not easy to have a team of people and be all over the world, basically, and have the same culture. And that's an important part too. Like in middle of February, we're gonna have our retreat in Las Vegas. So I have every chef, every manager from around the world. They come and we talk about our culture.
Mm.
We talk about how we have to treat our people, the people who work with us, and how we treat our guests. And I think that's really, what do we project? What do we want people to think about us?
My retreat will be in February as well.
Yeah,
Same thing. As you look back on your career, would you have done anything different?
you know,
No regrets?
there is some people, the guy who owns Balthazar in McNally,
Yeah.
like he said, I regret about everything I
Right.
did.
Yeah.
You know, even the way my stepfather was, but I think sometimes adversity makes you stronger.
Yeah.
So maybe that was part, my drive was already to show him I'm going to be better, because he always told me I was good for nothing.
Yeah.
Then my first chef in Austria fired me after 2 months because we ran out of potatoes on a Sunday lunch, and told me I'm good for nothing. I should go back home. And I was standing on the bridge on the river, and I said, before going home to my stepfather, I jump in the river and kill myself. So I think some of these things, when I look back today, yes, they were really rough on a young kid, 14 years old, but maybe that made me tougher to do things. But there are things I said, because I thought it worked so well. Spago opened super successful. Postrio in San Francisco was super successful.
Unbelievable restaurant.
Yeah. And then like Chinois was successful. Spago Las Vegas was successful. So I said, everything will work. So I had this idea in 89, 90, I think, opening a restaurant and a brewery.
I remember.
And we opened Eureka. And the restaurant did amazing. But the beer didn't hold up, because we did it the traditional old German way, which is called the Reinheitsgebot, where you only have the 4 ingredients and no pasteurization. But if you don't pasteurize it, if you don't keep it really cold, it will ferment again in the bottle. And that's exactly what happened. So we had to close the restaurant, and we were successful. At that time, in 1990, we grossed $5 million, which is a good amount of
That's
money.
a lot of money.
Yeah. And but I had to tell maybe 100 employees and says, we're going to close the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and, I couldn't change it because the whole company was all one. So the restaurant and the brewery were one entity.
Uh,
So would I have changed it and said, okay, the brewery was one entity and the restaurant another entity, would have been smarter. But you know what? Life is an experience. We always learn. And if you're willing to learn, and as long as you don't make the same mistake twice, I think it's okay. Nobody hits 1,000. People strike out all the time. People make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes all the time. You just have to face up to it and say, I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Even if you overcook a fish for somebody or a steak for somebody, if you go and says, I'm so sorry, I'm gonna do it, I will take it off the check or pay for your dinner, what they're gonna say? This guy is a jerk? No,
Right.
they're gonna say this guy really feels sorry and he really took care of me.
Last question. So the name of this podcast is Say Grace. I wrote a book called Say Grace, and
Okay, you have to send it to me.
I will. I will. So what I remember as a child in the South, on Sunday supper, grandmother would be at the head of the table. We would all hold hands, and she would pick one of the grandchildren to say grace.
Yeah.
And really, what you were saying was what you were thankful for. So, what are you thankful for?
I'm really thankful for so many things. I think it would be a hard way to put them all in one sentence. I'm thankful for, first of all, my health. I'm thankful for my family, for my 4 sons and my wife. I'm so thankful to have so many great people working with me for so many years. And I think that will still continue. And I have to be thankful that I made the decision to come to America. Who knew if I would have stayed in Austria, what would have happened? So for me, being thankful to come to America, start my own business here, and continue doing it, I think I have to be grateful every day when I wake up.
Well, thank you so much. We have a gift for you, but we're going to ship it to you. But I just wanted to show it to you.
Yeah,
So in Charleston,
yeah.
we have a cast iron maker
Oh, yeah.
called Smithy.
Wow.
So we're going to send this to you, but we're going to engrave your name on the back of it.
Amazing.
In the South, we like to cook cornbread. We like the fried chicken.
I know. I like it too. I like
Yeah.
it too. And I tell always when I do, I used to sell them on HSN.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, totally. Because I tell them, if you want to sear, like make a pepper steak, or if you want to sear a steak really well, if you have a thin, stainless or whatever aluminum pan, it's going to reduce the heat and you're never going to get a good sear. So use an iron skillet, you're going to get the best sear on it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. What
Thank
a
you.
pleasure. Well, I'm great. I'm thankful for you and for what you've done for our industry. You have paved the way for so many people.
Thank you. I think it was a little easier maybe at that time because there were less. But when you look around today, there's always something new coming up.
Always.
Yeah, there's always something new. When I said after rock and roll, I said, what other music they're gonna do now? All of a sudden, rap came along.
I know.
And who knew that Dr. Dre and all these guys would be so big and it would be all over the world and people would love it,
I know.
So I thought rock and roll, though I must say my youngest son, Alexander, who is studying at NYU, he loves rock and roll just like I do.
Yay.
And I'm so happy about it.
We need rock and roll to come back.
Yeah, I think I drove him to school here to Harvard Westlake, which is about a 20 minutes ride from my house. I listened to Pink Floyd, one of my favorite group of all time. And I listened to Pink Floyd probably 3 times a week. And he put it on, not me.
Oh, wow.
So he was at that time 17, 16, and he loves it. So I'm very excited about that he loves the same music. One loves the same profession. One is my oldest son, Cameron, is a total intellectual. He is the first one in the family to get a PhD.
Oh, wow.
And then my third son, Oliver, he's totally into music. He is into this modern music, the rap music, the house music,
The house
you name
music.
it.
Oh, yeah.
So he loves that, and he does the beats and everything for the rappers and stuff like that. But I like it for a while too, but some of it is a little too much after a while. But rock and roll, I can listen all day long.
all day long.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
If you liked what you heard, tell a friend, share it. We're on all the major platforms. Thanks for tuning in to a very special edition of Say Grace. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Say Grace, Food for Thought and Hospitality. We hope you join us next time as we continue to dive deeper into the inspirational stories about the transformative power of hospitality.